Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the next exciting episode of No Dice, No Glory, your one-stop shop for all your wargaming coverage. Today we give you a very special episode where we break down all the information coming out of the new East Front books for Flames of War. And with that, I'll hand it over to the boys.
Well, hey, thank you, Sean, for that great intro. And this is No Dice, No Glory, and a lot of people have been waiting for this episode. With me today, of course, is Glenn.
Hey.
That's Glenn. And Iron Tom.
Hey, guys, how you doing?
We're supposed to say Scouts Out.
Oh, Scouts Out. Okay, yes, indeed.
So, since mid-war, since version 4 came out and the two first books, Africa Corn, Desert Rats, a lot of people have been asking for one thing in particular, and we have it right in front of us now.
Yep. Enemy at the Gates, Iron Cross.
Yeah. So let's talk about this new release. Since if you want to know what we've been up to, just listen to the last episode from Historicon. Let's just talk about these two books in general, if we can first. So this is coming out when the article comes out. Matter of fact, if you are looking at this feed right now from our website, you'll have read the article already because that's where we're going to embed this. But I say that, this is based on two of my favorite books, title favorite books. One of the best books that anybody can read is, I believe, by Ellis. It's called Enemy at the Gates. Best Stalingrad book ever. And
a pretty good move.
Yes. Well, I don't want to get into that because they took the movie War of the Rats anyway, so we'll go with that. It is. And then the Iron Cross, which I'm like, isn't that a movie too? Because I've just rewatched Cross of Iron,
Sergeant Steiner,
which is an amazing book. But these two books, it's not East Front. This really is Case Blue to Operation Uranus. This is the offensive in the South Caucasus. That culminated with the Stalingrad pocket and the destruction of the Sixth Army. So that's where these two books are based on. And going with that theme, they threw in some cool things. So when you guys first opened up these files, and I know you were excited, what's the first thing that hit you about these two books?
It was, rather than covering all of mid-war, it seemed like it was just the early part of mid-war. It's really like 1942.
Yeah. What about you, Tom?
For me, it's diversity, just the amount of stuff. I focused on the Soviets. I have a lot of Soviets. I played a lot of them in the past. I probably switched to Germans for this because I don't have any mid-war Germans at all. But just the number of different kind of units, companies that the Soviets now had available, and then how they got it trying to work in the large battalions. Those are the two things that really jumped out at me.
Yeah, when I first started doing mid-war, I was doing like Tunisian Churchills. But after that, once I first played the Schmidt character, the Schmidt list from Stalingrad, I was stuck on that. That is one of the best lists. So I really like playing mid-war Germans. And let's kind of delve into the book. We were just talking just before we went on that the tank formations, and we'll skip right now to the beginning of the book, that it has two tank formations you could pick from, Panzer IVs, Panzer IIIs, and looking at them, I don't see anything different than Africa Corps.
They look pretty much the same to me.
Yeah. Folks, it is not diverse. I don't remember whether or not in the Panzer IV Company you only had the one mandatory platoon. I can look at Africa Corps, but essentially you have a Panzer IV and a Panzer III formation. The Panzer IV is the 24th Panzer Division that I guess fought during this. And it's the same Panzer IV as before, short or long. You only have to take the one mandatory platoon with the Panzer IVs, and then 11th Panzer Division, you have to take at least two platoons One has to be Panzer IIIs. The other one could be Panzer IIIs or IVs. Both of them have the ability to take a Panzer II light battalion. And, I tried to get some forces for Africa Corps. I'm not seeing a lot of difference. Did you guys expect maybe something different in this from Africa Corps, or?
Yeah, I think we should have had some additional. I mean, the tanks are basically the same, but some of the support options, some of the other additional units that can work with them should be some variation. Certainly, we'll get to it. The Panzer Grenadiers, right? They're there, but they're not all there, right?
Right.
They're half trackless.
Yeah, for the moment, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, they're not Gepetz, whatever that word is. I'm saying it wrong, I know. But yeah, was that it?
Gepanzert, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I all my German words are just mostly.
But they also
dirty.
don't have something that was iconic from the previous Flames of War Eastern Front stuff, which is the Panzer knockers and having the leader be able to go out and kill tanks, and that's all absent.
It is. So, guys out there, we just got the 2 books. We didn't get the cards. We did ask for the cards. Usually, we don't get the cards when we get the books. But since we have guys that are going to be play testing this, we really want to get the cards. But, looking at the 2 tank forces, I wish we could tell you there was more there. And, of course, we're going to be covering an in-depth article. There's nothing there that's kind of new. It's really the same, which I guess is fine. I mean, mid-war German army, this is what they had, 3s and 4s. So...
Well, we know the Panthers will come in the later book, and probably some captured T-34s and some other stuff. But
it'd be nice
for
to see
now,
that.
Yeah, I almost wish they'd rather gone with other minor nations or something here. I know they're going to do online. Supposedly, they're going to do online for the Romanians, the Hungarians, but I don't see why we couldn't have pulled right now. We play Panzer Grenadiers in the desert. We're expected to pull the Panzer Grenadiers from this book back, right? Why couldn't we have done that for these tanks?
Right.
These tank formations, they're essentially the same thing, and then that space could have been used for other more interesting units.
Mm-hmm.
But they're there.
But probably somebody that is going to read this thing in greater detail than us may say, "No, you guys, there is a difference." But whoever's doing the article will probably have to look at that. It's, these are German tanks. There's not a lot of variation. Panthers we'll get later on. So let's talk about what is new. And we'll skip here. It's a beautiful book, of course, as we usually. But 9th Panzer Division is listed here, but it's the infantry for 9th Panzer Division, the Schützen Regiment 10. It is Panzer Grenadiers without the half tracks.
Or trucks.
So I don't know. Do we want to get into that here, or?
Well, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
From the UK Open Day, we know that they're certainly going to be in Kursk. We know that. We've heard that. But also, there's supposed to be a digital thing for these guys that's going to bridge to Kursk, which doesn't make a lot of sense because Kursk is right around the corner. It's not a long delay from this book coming out to the next. These 2 books came out to the next 2.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they'd want to have a temporary digital thing, but that's what they said they're going to do. So we'll see how that pans out. But so these are the dismounted Panzer Grenadiers, and I suppose if we're thinking in terms of downtown Stalingrad, this is probably what we'd see.
Right.
These would be the rubble would make the wheeled vehicles non-viable, and tracks probably pretty dangerous too.
So you're basically. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so they're your basic Panzer Grenadiers. Your seven-man teams of MG teams. You can add in the 2.8 centimeter ATR, but they're of course a bit more expensive than the regular rifle machine gun guys from that we're going to talk about later. But so you can get them. And they're full platoons, unlike what we had in Africa, where we had the partial units with the heavy machine guns and the mortars mixed in. This is your straight up 7 teams with the addition to add of the ATR, the 2.8 Panzerbusch.
Yeah, so this is a little different, and it's a little bit more of what we're used to in the past. You got to take 2 mandatory platoons. I believe that it's going to cost you 22 points to take this formation at a minimum. If you add the 2.8 CM rifle, which I only really took in early war. You're looking at 24 points for the whole formation. You could take up to 3 platoons, but your support, it's the 5-centimeter anti-tank guns, much the same. The light AA on a half track. There we have a half track.
Yeah.
The 2-centimeter mortar, the 8-centimeter mortar, and the SMG, the heavy machine gun platoon. But what is new is one of my favorite weapons that never really got used very much, only in mid-war, and it's the 7.5 centimeter infantry gun platoon and the 15 centimeter infantry gun platoons. Did you guys ever? Well, I know, Tom, you didn't play Germans. I don't think, Glenn, you do either. But
no, I have pretty much everything. But I have both 7.5 and 15 centimeter infantry guns.
Yeah, and I've got late war Germans. I just never played them in mid war.
Yeah, so on this, you can get 4 for 14 points for the 7.5, and then for the 15, it's 2 for 8. And with each formation, you can only get 1 platoon of these guys. But
the bonus is that they're integral to the unit and not part of support. That's the difference.
Right. But these are kind of, and I'll have to look, but these are kind of pricey from what I remember from playing with them before.
Yeah, especially the 7.5s.
Yeah, the 7.5s, like I know in the Schmidt platoon, you can swap out. What I like about this is that you can bombard with them, but it has an AT of 8. And that's not bad, especially if you put them with infantry and you get assaulted. These guys are pretty good. What I really liked about the 15 centimeter is that in the old version, it was a breakthrough gun. So
right.
Here, it still is. It's an automatic, there's no firepower for it. It's brutal.
Yeah, brutal. Yeah.
These are actually really, really cool units, especially if you got dudes in a building. And the problem with them in version 3 is 5-up save. You weren't keeping them alive. But here, these are pretty good. What I noticed.
Go ahead. In version 3, weren't they even for the 7.5s? They were always 2 guns, whether it was the mediums or the heavies. Sure. So this expanding out to 4 is something new. Was there some research or something that drove that?
I don't know. There was one formation that was a PDF, the Spanish Blue Division. You could take 3 of them. And then there was a difference sometimes in SS units. Like I think some of the SS units had 4, but I'm not sure. But this was always something I liked because you can use them as 2 different things. Not bad. So let's get to the other unit, which is a unit I know I'm going to be playing, and it's 295th Infantry Division. I'll tell you what I dig about this. You could take Assault Pioneer platoons here.
Yeah, as completely Assault Pioneer platoons. And
if you look, these are, the Grenadier platoons are not MG-34 platoons. They only have a rate of fire of 2 halted, but they're a little bigger. And you can add right to the platoon 2 HMG teams to increase your firepower. And, of course, 1 2.8 centimeter rifle teams. So you can make this just like you could with some of the Grenadier platoons in version 3. You can beef this thing up to 12 stands for 1 platoon.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed too was that your command team is not submachine gun anymore. It's whatever the rest of the formation or rest of the unit has.
Right.
So you don't have there's no SMG upgrade option.
Yeah, these are rifle machine gun teams. So and this is a lot like the Schmidt platoon without Schmidt, of course. But while that's cool, let's talk about this Assault Pioneer platoon.
Oh yeah.
It is 7 submachine gun teams and 2 flamethrowers for 14 points. So this is a neat little platoon, but you're not hitting anything at a distance.
No, but you're hitting on 2+ in hand-to-hand combat. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's for assault.
So.
Yeah, I like. We were talking about this before we started recording. Just from my fond old squad leader days, those first three scenarios that they had, the original squad leader set.
They still are the first three scenarios, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The guards counterattack and the tractor works and all those great things. But these guys were bad news. These are the 838s. Remember those units that had smoke they could put out. They had flamethrowers. They would come rushing into the buildings. They were really cool in the squad leader game. So I'm looking forward to seeing these guys on the table. And this is probably where we're going to focus a lot of my efforts on for my Germans for mid-war.
Yeah, these guys are
One
good.
thing to note, though, about these as pioneers, they do not get an increased AT rating like they have in all past games.
No. At least until we hopefully something in command cards will make them like tank hunting veterans or panzer knackers or something. But yeah, as is in this book, they are just Joes with flamethrowers and submachine guns. They're pretty badass, but when it comes to tanks, they're no better than anybody else.
So looking at the two mandatory platoons, I would certainly take at least one grenadier platoon, one assault pioneer platoon. And if I'm playing like a strictly infantry fight, much like Schmidt, I probably would take one grenadier platoon and maybe two assault platoons and see what I could back them up. For support, they have the 3.7 centimeter tank hunter platoon or the 5 centimeter. You can take either or, which I believe is not an option.
3.7, right. And 3.7 is new for us. We didn't have that in the desert.
Yeah. Which it's interesting. I'm trying to look at the stats here. I can't really find them, but in the old list, you could take that Stellengranate.
Yeah. No, you can here too.
You can here too. Yeah. So these are, and you know what I noticed too? The range on the old ones, I think was it 16? No, it was 24. So the ranges stayed the same. So this is
except for the steel granite round. That's actually only 10 inches, which is kind of a weird number. But
yeah, was it only 5+ firepower? Again, I didn't play mid-war German, so was that a 5+ firepower in previous editions? That seems kind of light.
I think it was, but the AT
it was 37.
Yeah, the AT was really good.
Yeah, it's like Pack 40.
Yeah,
AT-12.
And the 5 centimeter gun with an 18-9 is not bad, but you can kind of play these guys together. But you can only take either or. So there's one thing on this list that is interesting, and it's only here, are the snipers. What do you guys think of the snipers?
It's I like them. I like the way that they're handling these. The rules have changed, and they changed to kind of dovetail into version 4. So something like mistaken target doesn't apply to them. So they'll be able to take out key like commissars or key pieces of equipment, of machine gun teams or mortar team or whatever that's attached. So, or flamethrowers. So they're going to have a useful role in that respect.
I see a key change is that they changed the firepower to 4+. So not only, of course, typically you think about taking out leaders, but I would plunk one in front of, say, a line of anti-tank guns. You can start taking those things out, or machine guns within an infantry formation or something like that. With 4+ firepower, you're going to do it.
Yeah, or double warfers or Katyushas, right?
Yeah.
Katyushas. Yeah, key stuff. They're a little easier to play than I recall from version 3. I don't know that I really used them a lot in version 3.
I never
even though
did.
I played a lot of infantry lists. Yeah, I think it's the cost. They were like 50 points, and they were they could be great. They could get pins, but now they're a little bit more straightforward. They go into ambush. They don't count against your ambushes, and they go ambush in your deployment zone or no man's land whenever you need them to come out. But unlike version 3, where when these things were destroyed, you would roll to see if they actually were destroyed, or would go back to the sniper pool, if you will, or when you would assault them, or you'd get your friendly troops too close to them, they'd disappear, and then you'd bring them back out of ambush somewhere else later on. These don't play that way. These are straightforward. You shoot these guys and kill them, they're done. You assault these guys and kill them, they're done. So I kind of like that. Things a little bit more simple.
Another tip here is that if you know that your enemy's probably going to try to hunker down and stay gone to ground, right? put a sniper in front of them, and they pretty much have to shoot at the sniper, or he's just going to continue to plink at them. So it's a great way to get your opponent to lift onto ground, and then you can really target that unit.
Yeah, and the points is 3 points for the German sniper, so that's 3% of your force total at 100 points. It seemed like they're a little bit more economically viable.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we'll see more of these in the future, especially in the Stalingrad scenarios or the city fighting scenarios. They're going to be great.
Which I'm excited about. So let's just go through support units. And these are support units for all the lists that we mentioned. But if we could backtrack. So we made a mistake here at No Dice, No Glory Land. And
first time ever.
It is the first time ever. So in Africa Corps, with the Panzer III Company, your mandatory platoons, it looks to me, and actually the schematic for the Panzer III Light Tank Company is exactly the same from Africa Corps. But the Panzer IV Company only, like we said before, only has one mandatory formation. And in the other book, you had to take at least, for Panzer IVs, you had to take Company HQ, 2 mandatory formations. In this one, your second formation could be a Panzer III Company. So it's a little bit more flexible. It's probably historical, but it's roughly the same as the other one, just that in one of your platoons you could take Panzer IIIs. Otherwise, it's the same. What also is the same is the Tiger Tank Platoon, which I don't know if there was any Tiger tanks in Stalingrad.
Oh, yes.
They were.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, no, sorry, Stalingrad itself. I was thinking Kursk. I know
that timeline they were around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I doubt they were driving Tiger tanks in downtown Stalingrad. I think they had some of those SIG 33Bs and some other armored support vehicles, but it wouldn't make sense to have that high velocity 88 millimeter round gun cruising through the Red October factory.
It would be kind of cool though.
Yeah, it would look great. Yeah. I don't know how practical it would be.
Same points cost with the escort tanks. Here's something new: the early Stug assault gun platoon.
Yeah, very cool.
Very cool.
I'm very puzzled though. The Semoventes in Avante, they got the ability to bombard, and I kind of always envisioned the early Stugs or the short barrels kind of essentially the same thing as a Semovente, but they didn't give any bombardment capability to these things. And I don't know if that's unreasonable. Is that something they did with these or not? Yeah,
well, you have the choice between the short and long barrel. You can only, I believe, take one platoon of these in support. For the long barrel, it's 3 for 27. These are not cheap. But, there's no bombardment. But I don't remember the Stugs having a bombardment before an early war. I believe they didn't. But I believe, like, with the Stu H's, with that short-barreled HE
they did,
gun, the firepower was a 2-up. These are
I was just saying that, these, as a support weapon, the Semoventes in earlier versions of Flames of War did not have bombardment either.
Yeah.
So when they added the Semoventes bombardment, it made me think, well, maybe they're going to do that for the Stugs as well, because I thought they essentially had the same combat role. But I'm not aware of how the Germans actually used them. They may have never used them as bombardment weapons. But
mainly though, people that take Stugs really are for an anti-tank role, and they fulfill that same role here with an AT-10.
Oh, yeah, if you take the longs.
So one thing about the Stug here, that is, in Flames of War, the Stug had similar armor stats to the Panzer IV. And I always said, they should be a little higher. This thing had a very low profile. Here, the armor is, once again, the same. I was looking at the wrong column. So
531.
But I always felt like, these things should kind of be like, they're harder to hit. They're little. So
actually, in V3, they were one better.
Yeah.
They were front armor 7.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the late war versions, anyways. I don't know about the.
Yeah, I don't know about this time period.
Yeah. I believe it was 531, and I'm looking through. Can't look through Africa Corps because they weren't in there. Next, you have the Martyrs, which
they're the same.
They are the same. And I like me some Martyrs, but it's only the 7.62 version, the same you get in Africa Corps. No changes.
Same model,
same Recce. Recce's kind of the same.
Light and heavy.
It is, but with this, you can only take in the other one. You could take the Recce troop of the 221s, 222s. You could take 4 of them. You can only take 3 here for 2 points. And the 231 heavy scout car is the same. And here you have the 3.7 and the 5 centimeter tank hunter platoons. Once again, as we said, the 3.7 is new. Then here you have the Pack 40s. Artillery, once again, just the 10.5 cm, which is, I got to tell you, I used to really like the German heavy guns, but artillery is a little different there. But here's something new that everybody's been dying for. The Nebelwerfer is back. And, yeah, and, I think it's like in late war, it's like 80 points for Confident Vet Nebs. Here it's...
yeah, it was 115 points for 3 of them.
Here it's 9 points for 3, so it looks like they're a little cheaper. But you're going to need something to stop those hordes.
Yeah, and they have a bigger template now.
Yes.
They're using the salvo template. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see, especially with repeat bombardment rules and pre-ranged in targets, that these guys are going to probably be a big problem. And especially if you get the full unit with 6 of them, and you're re-rolling misses on bombardments as well.
Yeah, but that's expensive in 100 points.
Yeah. Yeah, 18% of your force in one unit.
Yeah, but it is a way to stop those hordes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Panzer II, observation. We talked about the light flak. 88s are in here.
Yeah, and still no dismount observers.
No dismount observers.
Yeah, so it's going to be kind of weird to be driving a Panzer II around the streets of Stalingrad trying to range in your Nebelwerfers. But
yeah,
I guess you use your headquarters teams, but that's just seems like we should have a dismount option here, and we're still not getting it, even though we have it in Team Yankee in a lot of cases, in some cases.
And when it comes to the Stuka, and I love how they say Stuka dive bomber, because you know what Stuka is in German, right? What it means?
No.
It means dive.
No,
so it would be dive. The Stuka dive bomber is dive bomber. You get the tank hunter Stuka, which has cannons. 18.9, firepower 4 up. Same basic. But looks like you do not get it. You have to take one or the other, I believe.
Right.
Yeah. Because the Stuka tank killer, it's 2 for 14 points.
And it's 18.9, so having played the Hurricanes a lot, Hurricanes come in like at 9 points for a pair of them. These are 14 points, but they're both firepower 4+, but the Stukas get 18.9 versus the AT7 of the Hurricanes. So they're a bit more efficient at knocking out T-34s on the flanks.
Considering the side armor of a T-34 is a 5, you need at least a 9 to have a chance.
Yeah. So, folks, I wish we could say there's more here for the Germans, because as we transition to talk about the Russians, I have very little to say other than losing to them a lot. But I think that German infantry, you have some better options here, which I kind of like. The sniper, I think, is going to be pretty cool. The Nebs definitely needed, because you need that good, cheap artillery, because mortars just aren't getting the job done. The Stug, I think it's expensive to get some Stug love, but hey, they're in the game. But I think that folks will really dig the Grenadier Company, most of all.
Yeah, especially with the assault pioneers. That's what I'm going to focus on. They may be not a really a meta kind of force, but they're just so cool. I mean, just to go back and do some of those original squad leader scenarios and transport those into Flames of War. So that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to worry about them for tournaments and that kind of stuff, but I just want to do the assault pioneers like those old squad leader scenarios and get those 838 counters into action.
Yeah. Well, and then people will probably say, well, they didn't mention the Schlepper and some stuff that was in Africa Corps. But don't worry, because according to the breakout here, you could field formations with this force from Africa Corps. And for Allied support, you can field one compulsory unit from an Italian formation. So you can use all of your Axis stuff with these lists.
Cool. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Most of my time looking at the Russians.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to go back and change that, in Africa Corps, but it's a good list. Is it what the German players are waiting for? I'm a German player. I was waiting for half tracks. They're not here. But other than that, this seems historical. This seems pretty good. I have stuff painted for this. I've never painted anything for the desert. So here's my book that I've been waiting for, and I'm excited. So, yeah, I'm going to miss Schmidt, but I think this is a pretty good book. We
got command cards coming. We already know they've
coming.
Yeah, they've announced the UK Open 3 of them.
Yep.
One of them, which was some sort of a Russian Commissar machine gun unit, and the other two were. So we haven't heard anything about the Germans yet. So you might see a Schmidt kind of thing. I certainly expect to see Panzer knockers at a minimum. And we'll see what else comes to bear. But hopefully they'll add some other formations or some cards that change things that give you some different options for the units that are presented here. So we'll see.
Yeah, and for German players that have been just playing with the Africa Rifle Company for German infantry, this is kind of what you were waiting for, because the Africa platoons were small. You couldn't really buff them out. You only got that one mortar, but I don't know if you guys noticed here in the Grenadier, you could take a 8-centimeter mortar platoon up to 6.
Yep.
Which I believe in the one previous, you can only take 2.
Yep, they have the full platoon here,
so it's
not just the
platoon.
section split out.
So right away, if there's a mid-war tournament and you're going to play me, you're going to see a list from here. The rest of the book has city fighting, which we're going to get to later. But overall, I think if you were a German tank player, not much new. Matter of fact, other than the Panzer IV, nothing new. A German infantry player, yes, you have a viable infantry force that is a little bit less brittle than the Africa.
Both of them are actually the Panzer Grenadiers and the Grenadiers.
They're both pretty good.
And I guess you can use the Africas in East Front. Can you bring those forward as special groups or something?
Yes, you can. You could take it here. It's on the chart. Your force chart. You got Nebelwerfers, which you needed that kind of artillery, the cheap artillery to take out infantry teams. I think this is pretty cool. Yeah.
I think should we notice or note that the template for the Nebelwerfer is the Team Yankee size template.
Yeah,
it's the 10 by 10. In case you were thinking that the old the pie plate that we used to have for version 3, it's a little bit smaller than that.
Yeah,
but still big.
Still big. So I definitely think that this is a really good buff for the Germans. I'm excited, but I know that people have already suffered through about a half hour of listening to us blather, because this is not what they wanted to talk about. They wanted to talk about the Russians. So I think we should take a break, and we'll be right back with the Russians. What do you guys say?
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
I know, guys, it's easy to get tired of listening to Mitch talk and blather on all the time about how he loses to Russians, but you know what doesn't get boring? Heading over to www.nodicenoGlory.com for all your wargaming discussions, including on our forums, where you too can join in the action and discuss your favorite lists and tactics. So why don't you join us at www.nodicenoGlory.com. And now, I'll send it back to the boys.
All right, guys, welcome back. We're going to dive into Enemy at the Gates now.
Enemy at the Gates.
Well, I think you could sum up the book by saying, these are not your father's Soviets. Totally changed.
Very, very different, and really gets at that big question that we've had since the release of version 4. How are big units going to be handled? And now we know the answer.
Well, what is the answer?
Well, folks will already know from the UK Open. They pretty much were spoiled there. That the large units, the really big ones with like 25 plus stands, they're going to be having saves of just a 4+. They're going to represent the reconstituted units that were taken out in the battles of 41 that were stood up again with French conscripts coming in from the east. They're going to be motivated, and they're going to be green, but they're going to die quickly. So they're going to get down to that break point, that last good spirits point or poor spirits point, much earlier, much more quickly as they move along. So that's the biggest thing. They also
they have a great counter to that. Instead of hitting on 5 in assaults, now they hit on 4 in assaults, which frustrated a lot of Soviet players, and you'd have all these guys, but it's very hard to score a hit when you finally did get into assault.
Yeah, please add this to Team Yankee, right?
Yeah.
But and they have a slightly longer charge distance now. They have the URRA rule, URRA, URRAH, and they get that 6-inch closing distance now.
Do you guys want to go over all the special rules since these boys are new?
Yeah, we could do that, certainly.
Yeah, and what's important to go over not only the special rules as they are, but the ones that are not there.
Yeah.
So, for example, there is no commissar rule anymore. You're not shooting one of your own guys and re-rolling.
Right. Yeah, and there's no battalion commissars. They're only company commissars.
Yeah.
At least as shown thus far. And what the commissars do is they, like the Italians in Avante, they just give you a column shift. For all practical purpose, they just add +1 to your motivation, or -1. They make you motivate more frequently. So that's pretty worthwhile. But then you don't have to worry about messing around with them and trying to do this re-roll stuff and knock off another one of your platoons or another teams from your platoon. And another thing, too, is that they're armed differently. You may recall that they were pistol armed in the past. Now they're armed as the rest of the unit that they're assigned to. So if it's a rifle, the DPMG 1891 rifle unit, that's what they have. If it's an SMG unit, was it the PPSH? That's what they have. So a little bit more functionality out of them as a combat team as well.
Yeah, but it really changes the character of the Soviet infantry, because before it was, all right, make your motivation check. Oh, I failed. Great. Command check. Great. Now I'll do a commissar. It was almost impossible to fail morale or motivation when you're trying to keep assaulting. With that rule now gone, you're really only going to get the reroll for the one unit that your company commander or your battalion commander in this case is with. But if you have a second infantry unit off on one other side, that's it. They're going to get that one roll of 3+ if they or whatever it is, and then if they fail, they fail. So a big change to maybe end up being a big change to the way people play Soviet infantry.
Yeah, we did hear one of the command cards was specifically a commissar / machine gun unit that could shoot at its own units and whatever kills were occurred from that fire then added to the modifier for motivation. So. So there's still one more thing we know coming for commissars besides what's in this book.
But Tom, there's another huge rule that people have always complained about that is not in this, and that's hen and chicks.
Yeah. Oh, for the tanks. Yeah. They kind of snuck it in, sort of, right? For some of these tanks. I noticed and maybe we should wait till we get into them by unit type, and that's probably the better thing to do. But yeah, there's still some impediments to Soviet armor in moving and shooting, but it's not as uniform and it's not as painful as it used to be.
I don't know, man. I'm looking at the stats of the KV-1, which we're going to get to in a little bit. I still think this is a headache list.
It is, yeah.
I don't know. I tell you, I was excited as I was about Cross of Iron. This one, it kind of ruined my day. And it's not because this book sucks. It's actually very good. But now we're going to have to play against this.
Oh, yeah.
I lose a lot, so it's fine.
Yeah, and if you think KV-1s are bad, take a look at KV-8s.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what do we want to do? Do we want to walk through the book just like you did with the Germans?
Yeah.
Let's get the tanks and roll up into the infantry.
Well, let's go through some of these special rules because I've never played Soviets. So, like, some of them I don't know. I know that the Ura, where you could charge 6 instead of 4, I know that's a difference. But reading the Commissar rule, so in other words, if your Commissar is alive, you have a better morale with that entire force.
One better, essentially. Yep. But that's it. That's the only difference.
Yep. That's all you get. And they're not optional anymore. They are mandatory. They are part of the unit, period.
Which everybody pretty, I mean, you took a Commissar. It was a great thing to have.
Yeah, I don't think I ever skipped them.
So I know that they had the Shatrif battalions, the penal battalions. Did it have this redemption special rule? Because I don't remember it.
The same, yeah. You have these guys that they just charge forward and they die, and you don't even care.
Sort of like Japanese.
So, yeah, and well, these guys are great because if you take the penal guys, then they screen all your other guys, right? They're meant just to be a blade of armor. As they go up, they die, but then your other guys are right there in their face. The one thing that's interesting to note, though, is that a penal rifle company costs more than a regular rifle company.
Yeah, well, they have like the spearhead move. They can move up a bit on their own, but they don't allow other people to spearhead off of them. So that's a different thing. And it wasn't you ignore these guys when calculating victory points?
Correct.
Yes, and that was what we had in the past too, right? Yeah. So they're totally expendable.
Right. So like I said, they just charge forward and whatever they can kill, they kill. But the main thing is that they tie up a large part of the German or whoever you're facing force.
So one of the other rules too, that looks like it's new. It's the not one step back. So the Soviets have a better last stand rating, but it looks like it's only for tanks because it's listed under tanks.
But it pretty much just brings them back to where they always were, which is a 3+ on the morale check.
Is little tanks? That's a new one, isn't it?
Yes. Yep.
How the hell does that work?
They just count normally the small tanks. These are the T-60s with like 20 millimeter guns. Because they're low armor, they would not count against you by deep reserves. So because the armor's so thin, they would not count for the deep reserve category. Here they make it count for deep reserve anyways. So it's kind of a disadvantage for them.
Yeah, and then that's it. Really mucks nicks. It doesn't change it much.
Yeah, I don't think it. I don't have any of these things. I've never really felt that with a 20 millimeter cannon. I've never really thought that they were, But I guess maybe for assaults, I may start looking at them.
They actually were good for bringing in from reserve, like on somebody's flank, and they could attack, artillery or things like that. But they've really the T-60's really been nerfed, and we can get that when we go through the list of equipment.
Yeah, the tanks. And the sniper rules are same as the German sniper rules. The sniper hide and unseen killer. Those were the specific rule titles. The unseen killer was the no mistaken target that we talked about earlier. And the sniper hide is them coming out of ambush. So those are really the only two special rules they have. And then other than what Glenn noted earlier, their stat lines being different, like the 4+ firepower.
Yeah. So another rule that's left off from previous versions is it used to be the Soviet artillery always hit on a 6, and that's because they started like a 5. That's not there. So it's going to be might be way harder for the Soviet artillery to hit now.
Not with all those Katyusha batteries.
Yeah, well, they still have to range in. As big as
ranging in is yeah.
The skills, it's going to make it harder. But that's kind of offset by pre-ranged in. For most of the missions that we have, there's the ability to have pre-ranged in ranged in markers already placed. So that'll help mitigate that a little bit. But then when they have to shift it, then it's going to be a problem for them.
Especially because they have no OPs.
Yeah, yep. So just that, couple command teams running around. There's not a lot of those, and the snipers can pick them off. Right?
So moving towards this force, it's the schematic's all on one page, but you get 3 tank formations, 2 infantry formations, and a host of support.
Tons of support.
So you guys want to take us through the first unit there? Because this is the one I'm not excited about. And
well, let Glenn do the tanks. I know he focused on those.
Yeah, so the first one is really interesting. It's the old mixed tank formation, which used to be really popular because you could take heavy, medium, and light tanks in one formation. But for some reason, it has one big downfall. You have no company command team on this. So It's like you can take a platoon of KV-1s, a platoon of T-34s, even a platoon of T-60s or a company, equivalent. There's no command team to give you a reroll.
Yeah.
Oh,
nice.
I just
very strange.
I just noticed that there's no battalion command team,
and it's not an accident. They say that. They say
nobody's in charge.
So as much as I mean, that was a very popular thing because you could take a little bit of everything. Not having that commander's reroll, that's a tough thing to give up.
Yeah, and even if you take this with another formation, like you have two formations, that other formation commander cannot help these guys. You can only help the support stuff.
Yeah. So, and this is the only formation you can take the KV-1s or the KV-1Ss. So you can't. Before it used to be you could take a platoon of heavy tanks as support for your infantry, for example. At least I'm not seeing it in here as an option anywhere.
Mm. And maybe with the not one step back rule applying to the tanks, maybe the commander's reroll is less important. But it also it's you don't have that one more unit to help to keep you in good spirits as a formation. It's a whole, even though maybe one tank, that's a whole nother unit for good spirits.
So it'll be something to experiment with. But I'm kind of like not as excited about it. They used to be a great list. A lot of people took mixed tank, but it looks like you'll have to go on. Most people will probably go on to the early T-34 formation, which is your classic. Just you got a whole bunch of T-34s.
Oh, I don't know about that, sir. Let's look at the stat line for the KV-1. It is as hard to kill as a Tiger tank.
Yes.
I mean, you can hit it easier. It hits on a 2-up, but it's a 9.82, sir.
Well, that's why it doesn't care about getting hit. Unless you're running a PaK 40 or a Tiger, there's not much the Germans have to counter this thing. And that's why maybe they don't have it as a support option like they used to, just for that reason. Because, like I said, the only way you can take it is in this mixed tank formation, which means you can only take, they're very expensive, as you would expect. So you can take KV-1s, take some T-34s, and maybe some T-60s, and that's pretty much it. I mean, you do have an infantry option, you do have some mortars, but there's not a lot. It's all going to cost you a lot of points.
Yeah, and one thing too, we talked earlier about they got rid of Hin and Chicks, but they went ahead and hamstrung this thing with overworked. So it still gets the -1 when it moves and shoots in the same turn. I guess the difference here is Hin and Chicks. If any tank in the unit moved, then all of them suffered from it. This is now just team by team. So if you're just having to bring a tank or two up to get back online or to do something, it doesn't screw the shooting for the rest of them. So it's a little bit better.
Yeah, and you can take some tank types like the KV-1S, which are the fast version of KV-1s. They don't have that rule, so they actually can move and shoot without penalty.
Yeah, there they go.
You have to look at each one.
Yep. Yeah, I know we're going to come to it, but I also saw that on the Lees.
Yeah.
They didn't have any shooting restriction or impediments. No cramped turrets or overworked or that kind of stuff.
Let's go to the next formation, which is the classic T-34s. And normally you could have a lot. I will say that you cannot have as many T-34s as you used to. I pointed out a force of that today, and I could only come up with about 12 T-34s provided because you want some support. Whereas I used to be able to take like 20 T-34s in a force. Hmm. So they scaled back. But I think in recognizing that, frankly, the T-34 is a pretty good tank in early mid-war. And it really surprised the Germans when they actually ran into it.
Oh, yeah. That's why they built the Panther, right? Was because of the T-34.
Yeah. So I know we moved on, but this is the only one where you could take the KV-1, KVS. and they're for three of them, they're 24 points. This is expensive. As a Russian player, are you going to try to take this, or because your opponent has to figure a way to kill this thing? Is this something that is this attractive to a Russian player, or they're going to go for the classic T-34s?
No, like I said, I think you're going to have to experiment with it, but it's always been attractive to have that front armor 9, and it's always been front armor 9.
Right.
It's always been a mobile pillbox. It's just a question of what else can you have on your list if you're spending so many points on T-34, or sorry, on KV-1s. And but I certainly can see it as viable. It's like I said, you probably take, like you said, maybe 3, maybe 4 KV-1s, and then 6 or 7 T-34s, and maybe a few T-60s or something like that. But you're not going to have a lot in your force.
And 88s or Pac 40s in ambush going to ruin your day.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and now you guys are, you moved on to the T-34 early. This is not bad for what you're paying for here.
Yeah, but it's the T-34s have been nerfed a lot from what they used to be. So they used to be fast tank. So I could move my T-34s to 32 inches. So a tactic for me would be run them all the way up somebody's sideline and in their backfield on turn 1. Of course, that was that old moving at the double rule, and you got to risk getting shot up. But that was here, your cross-country move is like 20 inches. Also, they had the wide track, so you didn't mind moving through the forest with these tanks because you got the reroll or the save. Now you don't get that. I mean, the cross-check is not very good.
Yeah, just normal 3+.
Yeah. So I don't know why that's a radical change for the T-34.
Yeah, its tactical speed is slightly better. It's 12-inch tactical speed, but that's, it doesn't impress me as much as that.
I know, 2 inches on tactical. Okay, but I would rather have the very fast cross country, and because it had an aircraft engine in it. That's what made the T-34 so fast.
So in the previous version, here you have to take one mandatory T-34 early. But with your second mandatory, you could take Valentine's. I don't remember that from before either.
No, that's completely new.
I never remember seeing a Russian Valentine ever.
Well, I mean, you could do them, but it was all just, and that is like, it was a separate Valentine list you could do. But I've never seen this mix in there. I guess you'd have to decide whether T-34s and Valentines are a good mix. I'm not seeing that, but maybe I need to study it more.
Kind of wish they gave a Valentine headquarters option, so you could.
Well, I wish they had just said a Lend-Lease tank. They said T-34s and any one of the Lend-Lease tanks. That would be a better option.
Yeah, get the M3s in there.
And the Valentines go for you can get 10 of them for 24 points. It has decent armor, but it's got a pop gun. It's got the 7
2-pounder.
Yeah.
It's really got. Well, it's just the T-34 is a much better tank, and you're paying for it. It's 52 points for 10 T-34s. Again, in recognition that with a front armor 6 and an 18-9 cannon, they're very competitive against the Panzer 3s and 4s you got out there. And there's usually a lot more of the Russians. Anything else on the T-34 formation, Tom, or do we want to move on to the other Lend-Lease formations?
Nope, I think we can move out.
Okay. So the two other formations that you can take are either they're both Lend-Lease, but one is for the Lees, and they're just what you expect, a Lee tank with the principal. I think they're all exactly the same rules as you had in the desert.
Yep.
I didn't notice anything different.
Same.
Oh, no stabilizers, but but that'd be the only difference.
Yeah. And then the other formation is I'm drawing a blank. Is it the
Stewarts?
Stewarts? Yeah, that's it.
Well, Yeah, actually, they have the Stewarts just as a separate company.
No, but there was another I don't have it up in front of me. But
Oh, for the tank formations?
yeah.
Nope, there's just the three. You got the
Okay.
this one. You have to take mandatory headquarters, one mandatory Lee company, and then with your second, you can take either a Lee or a Stewart's, and you could take then an extra Stewart company. This one has the infantry attached with the 76 millimeter gun. Going back to the options on your tank list, it's T-34. So on the previous two, you could take T-60s. On the Lend-Lease, you cannot. But I think you have Stewarts that act as the same way.
Yeah, actually, the Stewart's better. Right?
Yeah.
But I think you're paying a little bit more for it.
Well, you should. You should.
So let's look at like the costs for the Lees. You could take either with long or short 75s. For three of them, 14 points, and then add a point for the long 75 with an AT of 10, which is not bad because, that's going to kill a lot of German tanks. The Stewarts, much the same stat line as the Stewarts we've seen in Fighting First, roughly about 2 points each.
Yeah, and the Lees don't have any of the overworked, so they not only do not have pin and chicks, they don't have overworked, so they're not affected by moving other than just the normal rate of fire reduction.
Well, didn't they have like 30 guys in the Lees? What was they called it? A coffin for 7 brothers or something? Or yeah,
5 or 6 of them. Yeah,
5 or 6. Yeah. But it's these tank lists. I mean, so when we think hordes, yes, we have seen Russian tank hordes, but I don't know if I could tell if this is going to make the Russian tank horde more prevalent in mid-war or not. I really haven't gotten to that point yet where I think I'm going to see, because you could jam a lot of tanks, but because of mandatory stuff you have to take.
Well, yeah, especially the T-34 formation, because you have to take 2 T-34 companies in that battalion, right?
Well, you could take one of them. One of them you could take as Valentine's.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, you can take Zelda. But I'd say usually the Soviet tank formation, you want to run very large groups of them, right? And I tried to run the points on a 100-point list, and like I said, I think I had a company commander, a company of 8 tanks, and a company of 3 tanks. And then I had to save some points for support options. So you can't, like I said, in the past, I used to be able to run 10 tanks and 8 tanks or something like that. I could run 2 pretty good size units in there, and you can't do it with the points there now if you're assuming you're running 100 points.
Well, what I think is going to be really important, in my opinion, for Russian players is that formation support, where you could take one, black box compulsory unit. I think that's what's going to put the KVs on the table, in my opinion.
And that's a great point.
And I think that you're going to see the KVs with the flame tanks, which we haven't even gotten to, and the infantry horde. So as much as like that first formation we talked about is not viable as a formation, I got to be honest, I'm not worried about some of this stuff. But now I have to bring something that could kill a tiger, which was everybody's issue with Africa Corps and mid-war thus far. And, the Tigers priced themselves out of the game. But if I'm going to take that mandatory 1 platoon, I'm going to take these 3 KVs, and I could get them for 24 points, and I'm going to give you a headache because you're going to have to figure out how to kill that while I'm winning the game. Yeah.
It pretty much forces the German player to take either PaK-40s or a Tiger.
Well, it's too expensive.
Well, I know.
Yeah. So I know that I hate mentioning this term, but I think that that one compulsory platoon, which is damn well going to be the KVs, I think we found a meta shift. I don't know.
No,
could be wrong.
Interesting.
Does the KV in these rules, do they have the rear turret machine gun?
They do, and that's one rule we didn't talk about. So instead of before, the rear turret machine gun was a very powerful rule because if you got hit in assault, you had to re-roll those hits. So it made all those rear turret machine gun tanks very hard to kill. In this game, they twisted it totally around, where now it makes them one better to hit in assault. So instead of requiring a skill check of 5 for a KV, for example, now they need a 4 to hit in assault. Yeah, quite a change.
Big difference.
Which almost doesn't make any sense. So,
yep. When they had those Panzerknacker cards, that's good news, right?
yeah. So, so out of all the Russian tanks, and I think the only one we haven't talked about stat line wise is T-60, and it's AT-5, front armor 2. These things are going to die quite fast.
These things were used a lot. Their nickname was Soviet power armor because they were great for assaulting Soviet infantry, right? Because Soviet infantry really can't do much to them. They're super cheap, and they all get one hit in an assault. Well, what they've done now, though, that I think totally nerfs them is their cross check is a 5+.
Man, the tracks fall off.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, if that infantry is in any type of, difficult terrain, you're not going to assault them with T-60s.
Yeah.
Damn.
Well,
I didn't notice that their cross was so bad. Was that just because, even half tracks aren't that bad.
I know, right? Yeah, it's like, wow.
Yeah. They must be like really, really bad track links or something.
Well, that was a huge, because it used to be just, they get pog on a 1. Now it's like, I'm not sure what you do with these guys unless you could figure out how to bring them into an open area in the rear. But they're very tricky to use now.
And they're not even as fast as a T-34.
No, they're very slow.
Yeah, and none of the Soviet tanks give you the spearhead rule either.
Right. They don't have and that only occurred, to be fair, in late war Soviet, where they had the decoy tanks.
Spetsnaz stuff and we might see Rhoda Razvedeki, in the later book, the Curse book. There might be some. Because they had
later,
White Scout cars and Universal carriers. So, heck, even Cossacks, some scouting Cossacks or something.
Pretty cool.
We'll see. Yeah, and that's, I guess, as we get in infantry, there's no Cossacks. There's no horse units in the book.
I think we're ready probably to move on to infantry, aren't we?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that we didn't start with them.
Yeah, that's what the big changes are.
But we right order in the book.
Yeah.
So tell me about the Tomsk rifle division here.
Well, so the Soviet infantry, and this is Strokovia, as we used to call it. I run this a lot, and it's interesting to see what they would do with it. So it's still your classic large horde. For 24 points, you get 28 stands plus a commissar, so 29 stands. And then you can add on a couple heavy machine guns or anti-tank rifles or a mortar, or most importantly, 2 flamethrowers. So, and that's a big change from our previous version of Flames, in that flamethrowers are available as an add-on to a lot of Soviet units now, where they didn't used to be. And I think a lot of smart Soviet players are going to take them, because not only can they help you in assault, but they can fire in defensive fire now also, which is a total change.
Yeah. And they're a lot cheaper, respectively, aren't they?
Yeah. And
points
they
per team.
Right.
So I'm counting here. You do all the add-ons for this. You're playing less than 30 points, or about 30 points, and you're getting 35 stands.
Yeah, but they die in 4+, though, for their saves. That's the drawback.
It means that you're going to stay above that critical 12 stand limit, meaning 8 hits to pin, for a long time. And I think you need to, certainly if your intent is to assault, that always should be with a large Soviet group, that's what you want to have. You need that power in there. Plus, the flamethrowers are critical for assault, because if your artillery or you don't get enough fire, all else fails, you want to pin down the platoon you're assaulting, which is pretty much a must versus Germans. Those flamethrowers do the job, and you get 4 shots with each one. So, I think that's a mandatory selection, is to take those.
So one thing,
they're not one-time use like we used to have, right? They used to be.
Well, that's the huge change. Just that now you've got these guys, and they just can stay with you and keep going over and over again. If somebody assaults you, they get a fire, defensive fire. That's pretty big change.
So one of the questions that we are getting quite a bit here from our Facebook crowd is the PTRD teams. They're no longer on a small base. It looks like it's 4 or 5 stands on a large base. And I know I'm probably skipping a little ahead, but that is one question that everybody seemed to have. But this is
you get a lot more of them now, so they're consolidated. But you get 4. I believe the RO is 4 and 2 if you're moving.
But just going back from my knowledge of this game, look at the org chart here for this rifle battalion. I've never seen a Russian list this big. I mean, you could take rifle companies, penal companies, snipers, Maxim machine guns, PTRDs,
SMGs,
SMG companies. Like, this is what? This is porn for Soviet players?
Yeah. When I look at this list, just the formation, it's like, why do you need support? I mean, there's everything you want in the base formation there.
Right.
Except for tanks.
They did take away one thing that was a favorite of mine, is that you used to be able to change out one of the platoons from the rifles to SMGs. So you could have in that formation, you'd have 1/3 SMG teams and the rest rifles. And that was ideal, because you obviously take your casualties from the rifle guys, and then when you assault, you've got your SMGs.
But so you could take a penal company for your second mandatory formation here, and they're all rifle armed. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, they're really bad, and they're not only the rifle armed, but they get +1 to shoot when they move.
Yeah, slow firing. And that's an interesting thing to note too on the regular rifle company. They're the DPMG M1891 rifle teams, so they have the DPMG light machine gun as well as the rifles, but they're not rifle machine gun teams. Their rate of fire is 1 moving and 1 halted, and also then 1 pinned as well. So basically, they're kind of like automatic rifles, like the American war.
That's right. That's a great analogy.
Yeah, they're just throwing 1 dice no matter what the situation. Kind of a different change there.
Yeah. So you have this class, and again, that's about the same size we always had for 29 teams in a full Soviet company. You could take the slightly reduced version where it has 2/3 of those teams, or 19 +1 commissar stand. But then to complement those, you can take the SMG company. So we all remember these, and they are massive though, because you could take 22 SMG stands plus a commissar. So a perfectly viable alternative to spending, all those points on that huge, large formation. And the SMG teams are just meant for assault. I mean, these guys will be fantastic, especially in like a Stalingrad scenario where they can go building to building. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, but
they have a better assault rating, right?
Yes.
Because of the SMGs, instead of hitting on 4s, hitting on 3s.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to do an opposite of what I said before. So let's say I take a T-34 company. I'm spending a lot of points for that. But taking one rifle company with all the thrills as that extra platoon, that to put into my force.
Yeah.
I mean, that's as many infantry stands in one platoon as some armies have in their entire force.
Oh, yeah. I'll be honest with you. In this list, I think the infantry is where it's at. I mean, the tanks might get the job done, but I'm not really seeing an all-tank formation as being as viable as it used to be in previous versions of the game.
Yeah. No, these guys are pretty good.
One thing that changed for these guys, too, though, is you used to see a lot of people take a full-up platoon, a full-up company, if you will, of 3 platoons, the max size unit. And then they would take their second mandatory choice to be like the minimum size. Here, you're basically at the medium and large. There's no minimum for these guys. There's no like one platoon companies, if you recall from like version 3.
Right. So, I used to do that tactic quite a bit. I usually would take one huge and bulk it out. That's my assaulting company. And then I take a smaller company, it's like the defending one. They just stay on, defend one flank for the objective or whatever. So you still have to spend a lot of points on infantry if you're going to do this. You're kind of limited. Like you can't have the penal company and a rifle company, which there's your obligatory minimums, and have an SMG company and have all this other stuff, unless you're playing a huge point game.
Yeah, indeed. Hey, one thing too, we were already talking about the large bases, and that's for the PTRDs and the 50 millimeter mortars. So there is some rebasing coming up if you want to get everything straight. In my case, I'm just going to put 2 medium bases together for the anti-tank rifles. Just, in the interim, I'm not in a big rush to get these fixed. And it's supposed to be 3 teams, 3 weapon systems, 3 loaders on the base. Oh. So you'd have 6 figures on that large base, and then they get that rate of fire 4 and 2. And then same for the light mortars. And I guess for the light mortars, I'll just put 3 bases together of the small bases and just run those around as one big cluster until I get around to actually rebasing.
Yeah, and, I actually had some Soviet lists on V3 had the large base and multiple shots, and some had the small base. So I've kind of got both already. But that's interesting about the mortar. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, light mortars they're kind of like Team Yankee now, right? These support teams, if you will. I mean, as far as like the grenade launchers and the SAMs, SA7s, sure. And so it's kind of like a theme they're going to with these things.
Great add-ons for cheap price.
Well, look who's here. Joining us from the north is Matt. Matt, say hi.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Matt, when was the last time?
Russians, which is fine because it's not something I know a whole lot about, but I definitely have been enjoying looking at this new book. It's a shame that I've wanted to make a Russian list, and in particular have Russian tanks, which I do own. But now it sounds like infantry may be the way to go for the Russians.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a lot more characterful, a lot more color to them. And we're not even to the hero units yet. We're not even out of the baseline unit.
Well, so we've talked about Strokovian, and again, it has the typical add-ons of mortars or the famous, one of my favorite units, the 45 millimeter anti-tank guns. But we could go ahead and go to the next formation type, which is the hero units.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's break down some of these, what's in these units. We talked about the SMG company, 22 points for 22 SMG stands, 1 commissar. Maxim company, you get these in your rifle company, but it's always good to have more of these guys. And we talked about the PTRD having a little bit more firepower. It's on a larger base. Talked about the 45 millimeter AT, the 76, once again, always good. We've talked about the mortars. I'm like looking at this, what doesn't this have? And you're right. I think infantry is going to be where it's at. And that I can't get around that thing where if the commissar is alive, it has a better motivation rating. That's crazy.
Yeah, one thing that is missing, and I don't know how important it is, but someone's going to complain about it. They don't have the regimental 76 millimeter guns, the short barreled 76s.
Yeah.
So, I can live without them. I have 4 of them. If they don't make it onto the table anytime soon, I'm not going to be all heartbroken about it, but I know someone's going to freak out about that.
Yeah. One thing that you have to note is tricky in this book is that, so you'll see the 45 millimeter anti-tank guns, the 76 millimeter anti-tank guns here with the infantry formation, but then they have those exact same units with better stats as support options, and they cost more points too. So players are going to have to be very careful about knowing which type of unit that they're going to have, the regular one or the elite one, because they're going to look exactly the same.
Or more importantly, who you're playing against, really, I think.
Yeah, Russians are looking scary, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the 120s, one thing that kind of struck me was that, for the 82 millimeter mortars, they go 3, 6, or 9.
Yeah.
And for the 120 millimeter mortars, they go 3, 6, and 8. Is that a misprint, or is that how they were organized?
Yeah, I never went beyond 6, so I'm not sure. I do know that is accurate on the 82s, that they went to 9. So I don't know what's up with that, although there's no benefit in the game terms for going up to 8 or 9, right?
Yeah, well, it just takes you longer to get below 6. That's what the benefit is.
Exactly.
Well, and what's one thing that everybody's going to notice? First of all, the 120 save on a 4-up, because I guess it's a larger gun. But once again, Russian mortars cannot smoke.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I know people argue about that, but it's a game balance thing. Can you imagine if I'm smoking you and then my infantry are right in your German face? It's pretty unbalanced.
Well, I was thinking about that. We haven't gotten to the storm group yet, but the assault sappers in late war, they had the smoke pots.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if that might be a command card kind of a thing where they get some sort of a little bit of concealment or something. We'll find out. But I wish we had those things, because there's so many more questions still open on these things. They were only kind of vaguely anticipating how we're going to use them without those command cards.
So, I guess we're moving on to the Hero Rifle Battalion.
Yep.
Oh, it's a good one.
But I noticed not a horde.
So we first saw hero rifle formations in the later books, kind of the late war for Soviets in V3.
Desperate Pleasures.
Yeah, and because it was supposed to be, well, these are kind of, they don't have the massive hordes. They've lost a lot of guys, so now they have these elite guys that are better trained and they had better stats. But a smaller unit that didn't get they usually fell below the 12 stand limit, so they could be pinned with 5 hits instead of, in that time, 10. These guys are kind of weird in that they get a better save, a 3+ save, but they have a worse motivation. And so I'm just not sure why you go with the Hero Rifle Company. It just, you start with 11 stands, you can bulk it up to get it to 13 or 14, but you're going to drop below that 12 level pretty soon and then be pinned all the time. So I don't personally get why you'd want to run this formation.
So what do you think they're doing here?
Well, you can still pull a platoon a unit company out of this and use it as with another formation. So we were just talking how you can get the small unit and the normal Strakova unit. Well, now you can at least get one of these guys in there.
Although it wouldn't count as your minimum.
No. It'd be a third unit. But again, for holding an objective, doing something, a cheaper infantry unit to throw somewhere else, you might get some utility out of it.
Yeah. And then they have the hero rifles, hero SMGs. They're kind of like a hero everything in this. Again, there's smaller formations that are harder to hit, or rather, I should say, they save better. They save on the normal 3+ instead of the 4+ of the mass formation. But other than that, I don't know. Maybe just need to think about it more. But I'm not seeing an appeal to the hero formation.
All right. Well, the next,
especially except for the storm group, right?
Well, there you go. Why don't you want to talk about the storm group?
I'd rather we actually didn't talk about the storm group and tell people that it's not in the game, but it's scary. It's scary. This is
threw it in. Go with their fighting in their new fighting and city rules. I think that's why it's kind of put in there.
Yeah, well, and they had it previously in V2 and V3, but it was always a very expensive option. Here, it's a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah. So if you want, and so these guys are good. They are fearless vets. They're pricey, but they're hit on 4s. So everybody used to complain, how come the Russians always treat it like these mindless hordes running around? These guys are studs. They know their field craft, and they're not going to get hit unnecessarily. So this is where the small rifle company, the minimum 5.1, you're taking that so you can get this storm group on the board.
Yeah,
the maxed out storm group. So now you go back to what you used to have there, Glenn, with your big awesome platoon and your small sit back on the objective platoon. So that's what you're able to get with these guys.
Well, and one of the most important things about these guys is their assault is a 2+.
Yeah.
So these are essentially the SS version of the Soviets.
Yeah. They're unfortunately though they are saddled, so you either get like 19 points or 16 points for the two unit sizes. One of them has 7 submachine guns and 2 HMGs and 1 ATR, PTRD, and 1 50mm mortar. The other one is the same except for it only has 5 machine gun teams. And so you can't drop those things. You're stuck with the PTRDs and you're stuck with a 50mm mortar, which may not be the best thing to have in assault, right? So you're kind of hamstrung by those a little bit.
Well, you just paint those guys with red shirts.
Yeah, shoot me first.
Throw in the 2 flamethrowers for 3 points each, and I think you got something a little bit better that makes up for that.
Yeah, especially if what a group like that actually is really useful for is if you have a terrain piece such as a forest that you'll never fit a large Strokovi group in there, but these guys could maneuver through there, and Germans can try to shoot them, but they're going to hit them on a 5 or something like that, and these would be perfect for getting in there and assaulting against a small front, like assaulting against his AT guns or something like that, or even, frankly, even against his tanks.
Yeah, I think they're going to be cool to play with. Just, again, like I was talking about with the German assault pioneers, same thing. I don't know if they're going to be worth a damn meta-wise, or they're going to make a difference in tournaments, or you're going to see these, but to get these guys on the board or some of these city fight games, it's just going to be a blast.
Yeah, well, they're going to be a blast to play. They're not going to be a blast to play against.
Yeah, I don't. They're kind of pricey, right?
They're very pricey. I'm not. Yeah, you have to experiment with them, but like I see, these guys actually are the closest thing I can see to having an infantry that actually has a really good chance of assaulting a typical German tank, not a Tiger, but those flamethrowers can be used against tanks, and it goes against their top armor. So if the German player rolls a 1 for a save, he's bailed. That tank is bailed. And if you're getting 2 flamethrower teams with 4 shots each, you get a pretty good chance.
And they're no longer coming off the table, right? So that's a big thing. At least they get to stick around.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely excited about these guys.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, so there's your big plus. We'll have to experiment with the hero, formation and these teams. But you want to go ahead and move on to sport options next?
Yeah, well, we still have a couple of battalion level units. Before we even get to the sport, we got the scout platoon, which they're also fearless vets. So again, hit on 4s and.
Yeah, and I consider these, and I used to always take these as a mandatory, because these are what gives you the infiltration for your infantry. And they have the spearhead. I think they're the only Soviet Union in here that has spearhead.
Correct.
Yeah, well, the penal guys have it, but they can't help anybody else.
Just for themselves. Yeah.
These guys can spearhead other units.
And that's a big change from V4 from V3, is that before these guys used to be able to drag in 1 unit. Well, now, they expand your deployment bubbles, so you can actually have a lot of stuff in the German player's face on turn 1 by having these guys sneak up and then, put everything in. Basically, the limitation is 16 inches away, which is actually is 2 inches further than the old rule.
Yeah, and they're this unit and the Storm group and the other ones. This is what I really like about the version 4 stat lines. So these guys, they got a lot of interesting things going on. They're hit on 4s, great. That's awesome. That they're trained, but they're 3 in the assault because they're submachine gun armed. They're fearless, but they only have a 5+ counterattack. So they're not gonna. So all these little subtle nuances are just coming out in the stats, and you're really seeing that in these Russian lists like we've never seen in any other of the previous version 4 units. They were still previously very much stuck in the 2 category, fearless or motivation training with the minor variations. These guys got variations all over the place. You really got to pay attention to them.
I totally agree, but it makes them very characterful,
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to make them worthwhile, but they're going to be fun.
Well, so for example, on these guys, they'd be great against, say, assaulting against AT guns or something like that, but not against an infantry line, because you said they won't go back and forth. But they're, like I said, I consider must-have, because the Soviets really want that infiltration to bring their infantry within 16 inches of presumably the German player, his infantry, and then because a blitz move, and then you could possibly be an assault on turn one.
It's huge. Yeah. It's huge with the new movement distances. You can really get in. It'll actually shorten up the games a bit. Like if you're playing Russians of any type, with infantry having that many stands to move around, you guys know it takes a long time to either play or play against Russian players.
Yeah, look forward to it. And I guess next we got the snipers. And unlike the Germans, they take a platoon of snipers with up to 4 teams. And same rules, same stats, same 4+ firepower. Slightly cheaper because they're hit on 3s instead of 4s. I think that's the big difference between them. These guys are picked out a little easier. So but there's more of them out there to mess around with. So, and that then takes us to support.
Yeah. So here's another unit I hate, and I'm going to tell people not to take it, and it's the KVM flame tanks.
Yeah,
I'm going to bring it now.
That is the unit, and out of everything you're going to see in the Soviet book, make sure you focus on the KV-8s.
Yeah, you better save your points.
Well, they take exactly the same number of points as a KV-1, but
it can
the difference is they get not only do they get flames, they get 5 shots each. And again, in the old rules, they would go off the table. So it was kind of go up, okay, I'll shoot it. And then they just got to hang around and keep shooting 5 shots for flames every turn. Or they can fire their 45 millimeter cannon, which the Soviets were smart enough to leave on the turret.
Potentially 25 dice like a turn. It's just the bit insane.
It's pretty crazy for these flame tanks. And front armor 9, side armor 8. Again, what are you going to kill them with? This is going to really force German players to take one of those high-priced weapon systems like the Martyrs or the PaK-40s or a Tiger.
So do you think the guy that takes as many of these as he can, do you think that dude is a douchebag?
And they also lost the movement, right? It used to be you could only move so far and still use a flamethrower.
Right.
These guys can move their full 8 inches or the OT.
I think you could move 6 and use the flames or something like that. So it's not a huge difference, but I just think that these guys can just keep rolling forward. And I don't know how much if the German player hasn't done his list selection right, there's absolutely nothing he can do against these guys.
Yeah. I think Mitch, get at your question, man, they're tough. If I can't see someone taking 5 of them at 40 points. I mean, that just
3 of them, 15 dice against a platoon.
Plenty enough dice for most infantry platoons.
And just to explain to people, if you don't already know, flamethrowers, they make the enemy unarmored team, everything except for a tank team, re-roll their saves. So in other words, that German infantry is not saving on a 3+; they're essentially saving on a 5+. It's equivalent to that.
Yeah, and the firepower is auto.
Yeah.
There's no.
That's why I said if you come up and you had 15 shots against the infantry platoon, that's it. They cease to exist.
So the other flame tank. Now I don't recall ever in any version of this game, even like Well, no, but you could take 10 OT-34 flame tanks. I don't remember any time you could take 10 flaming tanks.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, this was in the game before, certainly.
I know, like with the T-34 85 flame tanks, some of those lists had as many as 10. But it gets pricey. I mean, look, 52 points.
Well, the reason it's pricey, but these guys all still have their 76 millimeter AT-9 cannon.
Yeah, right.
And flames.
Yeah, they only give up the whole machine gun. Everything else is there from a normal T-34.
So how come they don't
so
have
these
this?
guys are, and I looked up these guys, and I actually did a point change, between the KV8s and these guys, and you actually get the same number of flame shots per point, if you want to think of it like that. So you can go either way. You could take the 3 KV8s, or you could take 5 of the OT34s, and you're going to get 15 flame shots. And there's probably a good trade-off between those two. They only have front armor 6, which is still pretty good. But if there's more of them, then it's hard for the enemy to kill them. Yeah. So if you think you're facing a Tiger tank, don't take the KV8s. Go for these guys, because Tiger can only kill 1 or 2 a turn.
One thing to keep in mind, though, with these guys, that them being bailed out is a big deal. Not so much for the KVs because they have such high armor, but these bailed results, they're 5+ to remount.
Yeah. So
they're going to be tough to get back in action.
And we should note that all the tanks are 2+ to hit.
Yep. Yeah, so they'll be hit a lot, and those bail results are going to stick around a lot longer for these fellows.
Well, and again, that's kind of back to where I was saying, you really have to have that company commander around to give them those rerolls. Otherwise,
Yeah, this is crazy. Lot of questions on Facebook about the Soviet hordes in assault, but a lot of questions about the flames. And even there's a guy here from Russia says tanks KV near Stalingrad. I guess that's a surprise to him. I don't know. I mean, we'll wrap up some of these questions later, but a lot of questions about the flames. And it is flames of war, folks. And it's yeah.
Oh, the Soviets will cleanse them with fire.
Yeah. Now we got the rest here. Katyushas, of course, you have to have Katyushas.
Yeah, well, we skipped the BA-10s, so we do have another spearhead unit.
I hate those. I hate them, and that's why I skipped them. AT-7, I always hate it, but you know what I like about this here is they're slower than in previous versions. They only move 8, tactical terrain dash, and they have a cross of 6.
Oh, even worse, the T-70s or T-60s.
Yeah, so
if you can run these with your tanks, then that's a huge difference. That's great.
Did they dump some range off the gun too? The 45 millimeter? Did it always have a 20?
I think it did.
That's shorter.
Yeah. But I mean, here's the thing: these things you can't take them. They're going to get stuck wherever they go.
Yeah. No, the only reason to take them would be to get a spearhead.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what you can do with them.
And it's free for 2 points.
Spearhead. you can still do that.
Yeah. 3 for 2 points. You know, this reminds me of my BRDM platoon. All right, now we can talk about
better gun.
Much better gun.
The Katyushas.
Can't have Russians.
Yeah, the Katyushas. They've really, over the various versions of Flames, they've tried to beef them up. Originally, nobody wanted to take them, but now these guys, according to Battlefront, I don't know how true this is. They said all the elite soldiers man the Katyushas, so their skill is a 4+ as opposed to the rest of Soviet artillery.
Yeah, that's good when they're ranging in for themselves, but then somebody else is ranging in for them. You have to use their skill.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah. So, wish they had an observer, but they don't. And they're smaller, right? We no longer have the extra loaders, so you just get them in 2 or 4, 2 points a pop, and they're going to use the same template, the salvo template. And I've got 8 of these things. Can I still use all 8 of them? I don't even know. Is there more than one Katyusha unit option in the support?
Yes.
I can't recall, but
yes.
Okay, good. Well, so I don't have to worry about throwing away models or anything, right?
I didn't think you were going to throw them away anyway.
Together. That's the good thing.
Yeah, you could take 2 of them.
Yeah. And these are now plastic, which is huge because the metal ones I have on the resin basis, they were just abominations to put together with each of those individual rails, and trying to super glue that thing together was just painful.
One of the worst units to put out for building, I think.
Yeah.
And it always broke. I built some for my buddy Jim. They always broke. Didn't care for them much, but they're good.
Yeah, but they're not as good as the Nebelwerfers because they've only got that 5+ save.
Yep.
Now I guess they are unarmored, so they can still be pinned even though they're tank teams. So they have the crappy cross check too, 5+, better than the BA 10s. So they're I guess mobility is useful for them. I guess you can drive around and get to where you need to go sometimes, but the range is so far you shouldn't have to move that much.
That's just it.
Did you ever move your Katyushas ever?
No, I don't think so. Maybe if somebody got ranged in on you, then you might want to relocate, but that'd be about it. So, these, if you get ranged in, you're probably dead anyways with the 5+ saves. You're not going to live through much of that.
Yeah, and then the rest of their artillery, and I know we talked about the 76, 122 before, which you could take within a lot of formation. Actually, you could take them within every formation. These are also really good tank killers.
Separate. They're like separate units.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. They're not the big God of War battery with multiple platoons. They're each individual units. And
one thing that I noticed on there is that they upped the AT value for the 122s. I don't know why, but 122 used to be an AT of 7. Now it's an AT of 9, which is obviously very respectable for mid-war.
But sure.
So they actually can also have that dual function like I used to always do with the 76s of put them up on the line. They can fire direct fire 9, or they can fire as artillery.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And one thing some people may be wondering, the 76 millimeter artillery units, they can bombard, they shoot direct fire as well, whereas the 76 millimeter units that you took in the formation itself were direct fire only. They were just purely anti-tank. So these guys are dual use.
Yep.
The big question for me I had about
by the way,
two guns,
you'll note that there is a difference on that. So
sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just when I looked at these earlier, was something I wanted to bring up when we got to them was the cost of the units. Like both of those batteries are exactly the same cost. You can either get them in a 2 or 4 gun, 4 or 8 points, but the stat lines, they're pretty similar. Like, do you have any idea why they?
There's a key difference there. Look at the save. So the ones that are meant as fire only as anti-tank save on a 3+, but the ones that are artillery save on a 4+.
Or did you mean the difference between the 76 and the 122?
Yeah,
no, the 76 anti-tank, which cannot fire artillery, only direct fire. And then there's the artillery, which can do both.
Right, but we're talking about the on page 49, the 76 millimeter artillery battery and the 122 millimeter artillery battery. Everything is the same for both. AT, range. Actually, no, the direct fire for the 70.
Firepower is different.
Firepower is different, but you notice like the 122 direct fire is 16 inches, but for the 76 it's 24.
Yeah, and you're still getting the 18-9.
Yeah.
And the firepower goes up by 1, but 3+ is still pretty good for,
Yeah, from bombardment. Yeah. Yeah, and they also got brutal. So there's some differences.
Right, and that's what I mean though. Like there is some differences, and I think obviously the 122s come out a little bit on top because they have an AT3 in bombardment versus an AT2, and obviously the firepowers are better.
I agree.
The cost for the 2 units is exactly the same amount of money.
Yeah. Well, being able to reach out 24 inches with that AT9 on the 76s has always made them more valuable to me.
Really? Okay.
With a rate of fire of 2.
Yeah.
So but I got to agree with Matt. The increase of the anti-tank on the 122s from 7 to 9 does make me reconsider that. I guess I have to experiment with it and see how it goes. But the 122s are a little bit more interesting option now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. I guess that's one of the 100-point game system granularity issues, right? They couldn't make it a 9-point or something.
Yeah. Get the odd numbers again.
Yep. So, and then now we come up to the units that Glenn was talking to earlier. So these are the same units that we saw in the formation, the 45 short and long and the 76 millimeter guns in anti-tank mode. In addition, now you got the 57. But Glenn was talking about earlier that these guys were better. You want to take it from there, Glenn?
Yeah, so you'll see that since they're, I guess, trained to be up front in any tank, they save on a 3+, whereas all the guns that fire artillery save on a 4+. So but the ones that save on a 3+ and have, by the way, they do have a better motivation too, so they'll stick around longer.
Yep, fearless.
But they do definitely cost more.
Yep. And did you see what they're hit on? The 2-hit number?
They're hit on a 3, right?
No, 4s. They're hitting on 4. Okay. These guys are fearless vets. These tank killer units. So
and I'll tell you, those 45s are awesome tank killers in mid-war. With an AT of 8, they can pretty much take out most of the Soviet armor, although they don't have the volley rule like they used to.
Yeah, right. Nor rate of fire 3. Didn't some of these have rate of fire 3 back in the day?
Yeah, well, all of the small guns had that, right? Yeah. And what was really deadly was the 57 with an AT-11 had a rate of fire 3.
Yep.
That was actually something that I meant to note when we were talking about tanks. It used to be you could have your T-34s, all 76s, but you could take between 1 and 3 of them upgraded to a 57. And that was ideal because you'd have an AT-11 gun on a few of your tanks to punch, hard target. And that's not there anymore. I'm hoping that again is part of those command cards that they come out with.
So Glenn, you would probably never look at, as far as the 45s are concerned, you would probably stick with the long 45 as opposed to short. So you would never, there would never be a situation where you would maybe take the shorts over the longs.
No, because not only that 1 point of AT helps, but the extra range, you get another 4 inches of range. 24 inches of range is really important in this game because that's usually about how far you start apart from each other.
Sure, I guess, yeah.
And one of the key tactics I can see now with the new spearhead rules is that those scouts can bring forward not only the infantry, but they can bring these guys forward.
Yeah,
get them right up close.
Start like 16 inches or less away from the enemy, and if you get first turn, man, you're going to devastate him.
And because you have that 24-inch range, it makes it that unit, that it makes them a good Overwatch unit to go with, the rest of your infantry.
Yeah, I've always found if I put these 45s on one flank, the Germans were always afraid to assault that flank.
Yeah, I'm digging it. I love that we have fearless veterans essentially now and multiple options for the Soviets.
Yeah. And the 57s, those are, obviously they can actually kill a Tiger. They can easily kill any other German tank. They are pricey at 18 points for 4, but they used to be called the ZIS-2. Those are, if you can afford them in your force, those are an awesome anti-tank platoon.
Yeah, but that 4+ firepower is going to be a heartbreaker. You're going to get those hits, they're going to fail those saves, and you'll be like, fail.
Well, 50-50, you just got to roll the dice. I like that in the notes, obviously, it's a forward firing and no HE, but, no HE, you don't really care about that anyway.
No, they don't have time to shoot at infantry. They get other things.
Definitely not.
Oh, cool. All right. And I guess we get then into the AA machine gun platoon, the Dishka.
It's interesting. I used to always take this, but I don't see any option here to dismount the machine guns like you used to be able to.
Yeah,
and it looks like just the 3 straight up trucks, and that's all you're going to get. There's no 3 or 6 or 2 or 4.
Yeah, with a 5+ save, and so they're very, very vulnerable.
You're stuck with 3 for 3 points.
Yeah, I don't think I would bother with these guys.
Well, they're pretty much your only AA option.
Yeah, but AA sucks so bad anyways. I just take my chances. Right?
And that actually leads us into the very last unit, Sturmovix.
Yeah.
Now, I consider these guys a must-take because their stats there are very interesting, what they've done with them.
Yeah, and they're cheap. 7 points. That's too cheap. 2 points cheaper than Hurricanes.
I know. And then, so people, what they did is that they made these guys hit on a 4, so a little easier to hit, but they save on a 2+.
Yeah.
So even if you have, I did the odds, even if you had 12 AA shots at these guys, so 6 would actually hit, and then all but 1 are going to save, and then you have to make your firepower on top of that.
One thing I just noticed, I didn't focus on these guys as I prep for the infantry articles. These guys are green. right? They don't range in on a 3, or they range in on a 5.
Well, like all the Soviet stuff, right?
Yeah, but the planes have been across the board for all other nations. The planes have been veteran as far as ranging in. Yeah, they've been vets. They range in on 3s for bombs from the Germans and the so I don't know about the American planes. I'm not really sure about the P-40 and fighting first, but that's kind of scares me a little bit about not taking these.
Yeah, they gave them a great motivation with a fearless 3-up, but they lack on skill, and it's funny in this case the flying tank rule is part of like their to hit versus the save portion.
Yeah, I guess they're slugs in the air. They're easier to hit.
But these guys, so for me, the reason I think these are a must take is that these are your Tiger killers.
Well, and you can't kill them.
They can't kill them with an AT of 5 against their top armor?
No, he's saying the planes can't be killed, I think.
Oh, the planes can't be killed.
Yeah, the Stormviks are very, very resilient with
they
the 2+.
Just keep coming back and coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess morale doesn't do anything for us, though, for aircraft. Right?
Well, if you lose one, don't you have to take a test?
No, not for planes. You did in Team Yankee, but in version 4, planes didn't check morale.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of a useless entry. I don't know why they have it in there, but I guess just to be cool, we're fearless.
But these guys have a really good chance of killing a Tiger, or doing things like attacking those Nebelwerfers that are killing your guys or something like that. So that's why I consider them a must take.
Yeah, I probably would for just to hit
for
the
7
rear
points.
areas. Yeah, for 7 points. Yeah, but that 5 plus the range in. Now for the guns, that doesn't affect them. So they come in with those 23 millimeter guns, and they can tear up some other stuff. And
so if you're going to, like, for example, shoot his nebs, then that works out.
Yeah, they're not dug in, because I don't want that 5 plus firepower.
You just got to get them ranged in. That's the big thing.
Yeah,
like you mentioned, Tom, like the 5 up for their skill.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's also interesting that they combine the rockets and bombs in the same stat line.
Yeah.
This was kind of going back and forth. Remember the late war conversions where the rockets and bombs dropped way down and they went back up a little bit.
Yeah,
now they're combined.
Paying for them.
Yeah, now combined in one line. So I think but the rockets in the past, right? No, they both hit against the top armor. Didn't matter. So they just kind of put them in the same entry. Thought that was interesting. So cool. So we're done through the Germans and done with the Russians.
Yeah, and we still got like more stuff to talk about, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So I think that we should, our listeners are probably like freaking out. So why don't we just take a quick break, turn it back to Sean for some witty comments, and we'll be right back with more No Dice, No Glory.
Well, they added another break-in, folks, which means I have to remind you again that we have an amazing website where you can find regular, updated content on all sorts of awesome war games, including, but not limited to, Team Yankee, Flames of War, and other stuff that I can't remember right now because I'm literally cutting this live. But if you love wargaming, you should head over to www.nodicenoGlory.com, where you will find our forums and all sorts of awesome articles to keep you going throughout the day when you need a fix for your wargaming needs. And with that, I will send it back to the boys.
All right, welcome back to No Dice, No Glory, where we're just about to bust open the city fighting portion of these 2 brand new books that are about to hit the store.
Cool.
I like the city fighting.
I don't know. I haven't played it yet. I'm looking forward to it, but I'll tell you, it's got me excited. Right off the bat, the table size, right? If you look at these scenarios, and just to give you an overview, each of these 2 books, Enemy at the Gates and Iron Cross, they have the same city fighting rules in both books, but each of them has 2 different scenarios between them. So there's some. So
they X-winged us.
Yeah, I guess so. You got the core rules, but then you have the special scenarios in each one.
Yeah.
And the first thing that jumps out at me is that the table size. In the old city fight back in the day, by version 2 is where we had these before. We didn't ever actually had formal city fighting rules in version 3, but they were 4 foot by 4 foot tables. And in here they talk about playing up to size 4 foot by 4 foot tables, but the actual missions they give you, they're 3 foot by 2 foot tables. I mean, that's just, I'm thinking I could play this on my kitchen table. I don't need this, So for a lot of gamers who have had limitations, like they live in apartments or, they don't have a basement or whatever the case may be, it really increases their ability to set up a game more conveniently in their home and play this stuff out with, I hope, with smaller point levels. I hope we're not talking 100 points on a 3 foot by 2 foot table. So that's not referenced here in the rules at all. But that's the first thing that jumps out at me.
So you think if you
those points on a smaller table, you'd definitely be fighting quickly. So not only would you have the ability to set it up in a small area, the game will be over in like an hour.
Yeah.
So you think
if
like
you World War One?
Yeah, kind of. So you think if you added the vertical play area, it's about the same?
Well, and that's what it is that, to do this right, you have to have the right buildings. You can't just have like a big building shell. You need to have 3 or 4 floors or something like that.
Well, and
that's where you get the play in there, fighting floor to floor.
So the rules cover moving between rooms, how to stay in command, how to shoot, how to assault up or down, where you can go within a building. And they are new rules, but it explains the current rules of the game as applied to buildings. And all the buildings they show are all rubble buildings. I like the one where the team drops down, 1 floor below. I think it's kind of neat. It's also, too, these are geared for shooting and assault. Usually when you got in a building, you had to assault. But I think these are kind of neat. I've played on urban tables before. I'm looking forward to playing this. I play this because you're not going to bring a KV-8 to this fight. Okay,
No.
Glenwood.
That would. I'd bring the KV-8 and flame you out of the building.
Yes.
Flame right through the window, yeah.
Yeah. And we didn't have as much detail on rooms in previous editions in city fighting. They get into this, 4x4 up to 4x6 or 6x6, each like a cell, if you will. And that room extends basically from the bottom level all the way up. So don't think of it just like it's the ground level room and the second level room. The room is basically that column, if you will, in that corner of that building that extends up to the highest level. So kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, again, why you have to get the right building terrain to do it properly.
Sure. And you have to think in 3-dimensional now, or really more so than you've ever had to before, because you've got those multiple floors. You're not just, not just a second or maybe a third level. Some of these buildings are like 4, 5, 6 floors.
Well, but they did say that you basically measure everything on the vertical or the horizontal.
Right.
I mean, so you don't do range from you range from so basically the way I'm interpreting this is no matter what floor you're on, you're just in that room. The floor is almost irrelevant. So when you fire at a bunker buster, they have special rules for how they do this. It affects everybody in that room, which includes not just the ground level version, but the second and third, whatever the case may be. Yeah. So kind of an interesting concept here.
Also for assault, for example, you just come up to the outside of the building and you're not going to be touching the team on the inside, but you're considered a base to base and you're going to be assaulted.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Get the pile in there.
Another thing, too, I noticed about these missions. So the first mission in the Russian book is Pavlov's house. And the first unique mission in the German book is the Red October factory scenario. I've never seen them do historical scenarios like this before. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, they just pick names, iconic names, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but look how it's laid out, though. Look at the one that's called the house, where you have an isolated Russian outpost away from their main deployment area. Yeah. And the Germans have to assault into that, and it's really kind of neat.
Yeah, look at the factory. You got units deployed in the same building, enemy units adjacent to each other. Yeah, different little quadrants within the same building. I mean, talk about confusing battlefield. So, and the reference I was making to World War I. If you haven't played the Flames of War, World War I, I know Mitch has done a lot of that.
Excuse me,
it's played in tournaments.
It's the Great War, sir.
Okay, Great War.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
That's also played on a small battlefield. In that case, 4x4. and it's like the flares came up or the sun came up and you're right there on the wire. There's none of this. It's like you're just immediately into the action. So this is going to have that element, I think, where there's not a whole lot of maneuver and kind of hooking and jiving trying to come in. You're fully frontal right off the bat.
Well, you can't be. I mean, 2x3, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah. So it'd be great for a weeknight game at your house on your kitchen table. Get out like 50 points, get some of these these storm groups or assault pioneers, and have at it.
Yeah, I like this. I think this is pretty cool. And I was almost surprised when I scrolled down in the book and I saw this, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of neat, because I love infantry fights. I seem to lose them slower than I do tank fights. But like this, I think is kind of neat. They have, some special rules, the Across the Volga special rules.
Yes.
So
it's back.
Artillery. Yeah. So, I mean, the only thing I looked for that from version 2 that's missing is, if artillery hits a building, the lower the floor goes, the higher the firepower roll. I didn't see that.
Yeah. Because now the room is irregardless of floor. The room goes from that whole column stacking up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And one thing about the Guns Across the Volga that's slightly different, not only can you now have offboard artillery, that's what Guns Across the Volga is, you're able to have artillery off the table that's able to fire on. Guns that are on the table cannot bombard at all. They're only direct. So they took out so something like Nebel Warfers would never be on the table in city fighting, because they have no ability to bombard or put smoke on the table if they're deployed on the table. So they have to go off table to be in effect.
Yeah. So of course, on these size tables, things like your 15 centimeter gun, it should be firing direct. I mean, you want those brutal rolls.
And you will. But just it was another step. It wasn't just the version 2 Guns Across the Volga. It's that plus an additional thing with not only is it a benefit, it's a limitation.
Yeah, well, now both sides can do Across the Volga as opposed to before, just the Soviets.
Yeah. I kind of like this. What do you?
I'm definitely going to be doing this. I'm going to get my buddy here. We printed out some of the list, and we're gonna give a good play test for this and do an AR on it here in the near future. So I just easy evening, and I don't know about tournaments. It would be kind of cool. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting to have some just hour and a half round city fight tournament. If you could have a handful of small tables or put 2 of these tables on a 4x6 table, you could feasibly do that. Have people, 4 players at the same 4x6, so you could have a bigger tournament in a smaller space for like a smaller size store. So a lot of potential here.
And not only that, you could get in all 4 scenarios too. You wouldn't have to pick 3 out of the 4. I think you could play all 4 of them in a tournament day and still have a lot of time left.
Yeah, I'd love it. I think there's going to be just it's almost like a different game. It's like a game within a game. So it's something
it's about time they did something like that for World War II, because you have it for like Nam you do.
Very different.
But in this, I think this was overdue. I think this is a really good step. And the other one too, what I kind of dig about this is the guys that make these tables are like artisans. They make the most beautiful urban city ruin table that you will ever see. And I love seeing those things because you really want to play in one of them too. Every time I see one, there was a guy locally here, Alan, that did one, and he had these little like tea lights, It was like so good. Don't know what happened to it because, unless you get a group of guys that really want to play it, and you'd always have to make up your own scenario. This, I think all you guys that love doing this, and I think Tom Mullane's one of those guys, I think this is going to be really neat.
Yeah. There's a game store down in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It's about 2.5 hours away. And they had a fantastic Stalingrad board. I hope they still have it, because if they do, I'm going to be making a trip down there in the near future on a Saturday just to play on it.
Yeah. And I think we just blushed over the rules, but like they're so different. Like teams don't start dug in, and I think folks are going to have a fun time with this. I think folks are going to have a lot of questions because as soon as you hand gamers a book, how can I break it? But guys, this is just to have fun.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Do you guys want to get to some of the questions that we got on Facebook?
Sure.
Yeah,
So earlier today, we threw some things out on Facebook, and we said, hey, tell us kind of what you're thinking. What I kind of noticed is most of the questions were, you could see who did and who did not see the spoiler from UK. So, Bill White asked a question like, we love Bill White. He always says to take cheap shots, but he's like, his question is, assault engineers, flamethrowers, and flame tanks. That's his question. Yes, Bill, they're in the game. We talked about it. The new basing for light mortars, which I don't believe we saw light mortars.
Yeah.
We had them.
We had them. Okay.
The add-ons to the Soviets.
And the PTRDs, they're on bigger bases, which, I don't see. What kind of tanks and vehicles? I think we covered that. Here's a good one. We covered it too. Which of the units from East Front books can be used in the desert, and how does this work? We covered that. It's within the org chart, but in a way, unless Africa Corps gets updated, I would think that they would have to update that. But looks like you can mix and match.
Well, they should. Yeah, the Panzer Grenadiers in Tunisia, and then the infantry, the regular Schutzen kind of guys, the nine. That's what they had in Tunisia too. So it's pretty much everything for the Germans.
I think part of the question is, now it's all mid-war. So if there's a mid-war tournament, you're going to have a Soviet horde fighting Africa Corps.
But you also had that before.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't have a Soviet list like this before, though.
One thing that Mitch had alluded to earlier, being the meta guy, was that I absolutely had no concern about Tigers playing mid-war the entire year that I've been playing version 4 mid-war.
Because they're expensive.
I just did. Hey, even if you did take them, I would just destroy everything else. And that's why people didn't take them. So, but now you are going to see a KV2. Well, I guess it's already happened with the Churchills. Churchills have been floating around out. I just haven't had a lot of experience with them yet. So that is changing. You can't just blow off the heavy AT option now. That is definitely gone.
Yeah. Yeah, this is game changing, but we'll get to that in our wrap up. Let me see. One guy asked a question. T-3457. No.
No.
Stug.
Well, at least not yet.
Hopefully in command cards.
Yeah. Stug G33B. Yes.
Nope.
No, that's right.
Yeah, it'd be a SIG 33B.
Yeah, they didn't have that.
It's
kind of like a Brumbar with less armor.
It's a 15 centimeter that's mounted.
Yeah.
Then PAC 9738. No.
Yeah, we didn't have those in mid-war and version 3 either. We didn't get those until late war, until like the very, very, very last few, like the Ardennes books, where the Volksgrenadiers started getting them.
The filler books.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Bill Balding, a guy I love, who's actually up in Canada now, and I gave him your contact. He goes, as you know, I have all kinds of issues. In this context, I'll say he plays boutique armies. I'd say Finland in the continuation war and Spain's Athul division. And I said, Bill, that would be nice, but they're not here. I love playing Spanish Blue Division. Throck played Spanish Blue Division. A lot of these are just questions of people that didn't get what's in this. Will big Soviet infantry be able to assault positions in mass, or will it be too easy to stop them with defensive fire? This comes from Nathan Bainey. What do you guys think? I think now with artillery stopping, and I don't know. I don't know how to answer this question.
It's gonna be easier to stop them because they won't get the reroll on the reroll to keep going. All right. So they'll, if they get pinned by artillery, which is certain to happen, then they get a roll of 3. If they have the commander, they'll get another 3. But then that's it. There's no commissar to help them beyond that. So you still got a much better chance than you had in the past of pinning them down.
Yeah, but you also have the 6-inch charge now, so your ability to maintain quality of quantity, whatever. We're using that term. I don't think that's even a term anymore. But to keep that stand count to increase the pin requirement, you have a greater chance of keeping that, at least with the normal stroke unit.
True. Yeah.
Then
now you have the storm group guys that are hitting on 4s, so that big unit can close easier now because they're not as easy to hit.
And then here are some questions. Soviet German motorcycles? No. Panzer 38Ts of the 22nd Panzer Division at Stalingrad. Nope. No 22nd Panzer. But it seems like a lot of the questions really were just folks that didn't see the, the spoiler from England. And then, of course,
the folks who didn't listen to our last podcast is what you're trying to say.
2 podcasts ago.
2 podcasts, yeah.
But they're good questions. Guys, we're going to try to keep posting this, and hey, I'll throw it up on our Facebook page. It is No Dice, No Glory at Facebook. But I think now we're at the time of the show. It's also late. We're on hour 220 here. Just a quick wrap-up of, I could talk to the Germans. I think German players are going to love the expanded infantry. I think tanks doesn't give you anything new, anything sexy. You got the Nebs. You got some other little things, but if you were waiting for that real German infantry list to get your guys out there, these are real German infantry formations, not, the Africa light type divisions or light type forces. Finally. So
options and something different.
Yeah. Tanks, same. No difference in the tanks. We got 2 Russian players here, and I think they're going to tell us a little bit about what they think of the Russians. We waited for this for now a year and a half. Has it been a year and a half since those first 2 books came out almost?
Just about March.
And everybody's been saying Russians. Russians are here, guys. What are you thinking?
I think you're good to go. I mean, you don't have everything as the theme throughout version 4, but you got plenty, and you got some new cool things you didn't have before. I really think that they've through the nuances of the cards and like the storm groups and what they've done with the scouts, they've really made things extremely interesting as a Russian player. I don't know the viability, but cool.
Yeah, well, I think that people are going to learn to fear the Soviets again, and I can't wait to get them on the table and try out these new rules because it is radically different than past Soviets. So we'll have to try them out and see, but they look like a very viable force to me.
Yeah, I'm going to focus on Germans. Like I have a large Soviet force. It's really more of a late war force but I could play it in mid-war as well. But I'm going to, mostly because of my local other players, there's other folks around here who really want to play Soviets. So I'm like, I don't have mid-war Germans, so that's where my focus is going to be. But if I could just choose, I'd have gone Soviets. I would have just, focused on what I already have. But I'll provide a nice op 4 from my local gaming buddies.
All right, so
I just need the books to hit before Canadian Nationals in September. If they hit before Canadian Nationals with a week or 2 weeks to spare, I can get them on the table and play them in a national tournament. If not, then I guess I got to wait till next year, or next time mid-war is actually in rotation.
Yeah, and that's the big question too. How's this? Let's say Historicon next year is mid-war open, so Desert and East Front. Is that going to help?
Well,
it's going to give you more options for sure.
Yeah,
it'll help attract players because I think a lot more people they want to play Soviets and they couldn't before. Really.
Right,
and they can now because I feel like after going through the Soviet book, I think it wasn't just put out quickly just to give the Russians something or players something with the red star on the side. But I think it's going to have some good options. I like the flame tanks at the higher points values. I think the artillery and the anti-tank guns are cool. Obviously, Soviet horde is back, and like we just said, I think people are gonna start to fear Russians again.
Yeah.
So
how are they going to top this?
Yeah, Kursk.
How's Kursk? I mean, they've done so much here and done so many different things. Just makes me wonder how they're going to go forward into Kursk. I mean, they're going to add Panthers. Check, got it. But there's been so many new cool things induced in these 2 books. I'm almost kind of like bummed now that there's not much new that's going to come into the curse side. It's going to go back to the standard stuff.
Well, here's a question. Follow-up question is, now for open tournaments for mid-war, are we just going to see forces from these two books? Because if I'm a German player, I could take Italians with this book. I'm going to run lists from this book. My great panzers are going to see the table. Does this kind of kill the Africa book?
I think it does, because Africa was like a weak rush compared to what we got here. I think they really thought out what they were going to release. You've got way more options than you do, obviously, than the North Africa book. I'm the same. I think your tanned DAC stays in your case, and the outcome the gray.
Yeah,
you got to have Nebel Warfers, right?
I will say though that when the Curse book comes out, I mean, there's so much more Soviet stuff that is not in this book.
Yeah,
there's no SU 57, 85, 100. I mean, all the SUs, right? There's and I mean, there's just a ton of stuff that will come out. They have the T-34. These are early. You have the T-34 late, and all sorts of possibilities for further books just for the mid-war period that are going to sex up the Russians more. And, of course, then the Germans will start to get some more stuff like half-tracks. What a concept.
Yeah, right. Yep, and maybe even Rotor Rezvedeki for the
I mean, I think the Curse book will be another game changer on this level. I mean, a lot more stuff.
So do you think half tracks are taking a back seat because of the whole, mounted assault thing, and maybe they haven't really figured out whether that's a good or a bad thing to have, reintroduced into the game?
Yeah, I think mostly in this case is because the focus on Stalingrad and city fighting. It just, you could be right. They could be part of it, but, I'm not hurt that there's not half tracks right now for a Stalingrad focused book. I just don't see them running around downtown, but I realize that people want to use these lists for something beyond Stalingrad. So,
now you're trading off half track machine gun dice for Soviet flame tank dice.
Yeah. There you go. How do you stop a horde in the past? You would mass your half tracks and maybe leave one team in it, and you would get the shots to stop that horde. I'm still stuck on what we said of Africa Corps being dead. I mean, unless you heavily invested in Lorraine Schleppers, I would say that as a German player, this is your new book.
Yeah, that's going to be
start repainting your tanks.
Yeah, so I mean, this thin little Africa Corps book I'm holding up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right. But also remember, you can pull some of this stuff into Africa, so you can still be running your Africa Corps and bring some of these, like for the German side, in there. They had Nebel Warfers in Africa, so in Tunisia. So Africa, the Africa book as it is may not be used that much, but you're not going to stop seeing DAC forces, is what I'm saying. You're going to see DAC forces that are built using these parts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I definitely think you will, but it's like if I'm going to open up and start a infantry list, which is, roughly half the people in the game, I'm coming here. So, but it's not bad. I mean, this to me is it's a big leap. So, I mean, is this a true or false statement? You want to win a tournament, go Russian or go home. Is that true or false?
It's obviously true.
I think it's true.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm I mean, they do have some great assets. I guess it's the tanks. If you can crack the nut on the heavy tanks consistently, I think you're okay. But I'm not so sure. Like I said before, I blew them off. Now I can't do that anymore. I've got to consider KVs popping up out of nowhere.
Right, and no more defender auto wins too makes it a huge difference. I think playing a Russian player as well. You just can't take that horde, sit back and win, 3 or 4 out of your 6 games.
Yep.
So I think overall we're saying from No Dice, No Glory that these books are 2 big additions. Folks are going to like them. It's meta changing, which, I guess I have to admit. And, there's going to be a lot more we're going to talk about this. So when this podcast drops, you're going to see every other day a constant stream, in-depth articles of the stuff we talked about. Please read the articles. Please like us on Facebook, like our podcast on iTunes. Yeah, and send the questions because we're gonna throw out what we're gonna record on next. And if you guys are interested, throw us the questions because I think we got to most people's questions today. And I was even like doing it as we're live here, and we got like 4 or 5 more questions. So hit the No Dice No Glory forums, and I'm gonna shut up now, and I'll let these guys say goodbye, and we'll turn it back to Shawnee.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Great talking to y'all.
Yep. Look to see you on the gaming table.
We can't wait till these go live, and let's make the next cast a good one too. Get some more information, get some more questions, and we'll get you as much information as we can provide.
All right, Sean, back to you.
Thanks so much for listening today, folks. We're really excited about the content coming out of East Front. So if you want to join us in talking about it and pulling apart the lists and all that other sort of good stuff, why don't you join us on the website at www.nodicenoGlory.com. And with that, we'll see you next time, folks.